This meeting is being recorded.
Does anybody know if Greg's showing up today?
I was talking to him earlier. He definitely was.
Yeah, he is here now. He's in.
Yes.
I'm here.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick housekeeping note for the members of public. If you could please stay muted until your application is in queue, that would be great. Just reduces the background noise. And we'll get started shortly.
Recording.
I'll figure this all the same. There we go.
All right, well then I will see you at 9.
Thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
You too, eh? Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let's see, it's 4 o'clock. We'll get started. I'll require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to convene as a committee of adjustment for the April 13th, 2022 hearing. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Karen. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin hereby convenes at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. The Committee of Adjustment hereby convenes a public meeting as per the Planning Act. Applicants and the public can speak at the public meeting. When asked who wishes to speak to an application, please raise your hand and direct all comments through me. Notice of the decisions will be sent to applicants and to the public if requested. Any person may appeal a decision or condition of approval within 20 days after the notice of decision. I'll require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to accept the agenda for today's meeting as circulated. Moved by Terry, seconded by Stuart. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin hereby approves the agenda for the April 13th, 2022 meeting. I'll also require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to accept the minutes of the previous meeting of committee. Moved by Stuart, seconded by James. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin hereby accepts as read and circulated the minutes of its last hearing that took place on Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. All in favor? Unanimous, passed. I'll also ask any of the committee members from the Committee of Adjustment for disclosure of any pecuniary interest with respect to today's applications. None noted. And I will now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the first application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application A-2022-0006-F Rosen is to construct a 1.5 story detached garage and is requesting a variance to the maximum permitted height. No formal correspondence was received.
Thank you. Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application?
I have no comments regarding the application. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you. And that was from,
I'm Doug Rosen, the applicant.
thank you. Do any of the committee members have any questions? I will then require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Terry, seconded by Stuart. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0006-F to construct a 1.5 story detached garage, 80.3 square meters on the subject lands and request variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Section 4.1.4, maximum height of an accessory structure. Permitted height is 4.5 meters. Proposed height is 5.2 meters, requiring a variance of 0.7 meters, subject to the following conditions. That the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. 2, the extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. And 3, that the conditions of the agreement under section 51(26) of the Planning Act, being Schedule A to this report, be satisfied and the required material be included in the site plan agreement. All those in favor? Passed, unanimous.
Thank you. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the decision, and the 20-day appeal period now starts. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0007-H done is to construct a steel pile dock addition and is requesting a variance for maximum combined surface area and maximum length of a dock. A letter of support was received from neighbors Scott and Jennifer Smith. Thank you.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application?
I do. I just joined in time. Good. Just that it hopefully is as simple as it appears on the application. Nothing really in particular to say about it.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Do any of the committee members have any questions?
Yeah, can I ask a question with regards to the permitted variance that was done prior up to 177.9?
Yeah.
How long ago was that request made and when was that approved? How many years ago?
That was made, I think it went to Committee of Adjustment in fall 2014.
Okay, so it's been like eight years ago.
Yeah.
And in that time, then there's been a decision or nothing was done. And so you came back presumably to the Committee of Adjustment to go to 190?
Yeah, we looked at there's a big chunk of the dock is a crib dock, and we looked at sort of decommissioning that, but it just with the M&R seemed like it just seemed like a simpler thing to just go for a minor adjustment rather than demolish a big chunk of the existing crib. Because the dock is more useful because of the depths. The dock is more useful further out. That's just something we learned after we built, basically.
So maybe my question would be to Taylor, and it doesn't really pertain to this particular dock issue. I don't have a problem with it. But my question has to do with variance requests and how often is an applicant able to come back for a variance or another variance or another variance? As I say, in this particular case, it's not a measurable deal, but there may be circumstances where that would be the case. And you don't get that sort of information here on the application to make that kind of judgment. And I'm just wondering what the process is from your perspective, Taylor, as to how you look at those variances and are able to make adjustments or presume that there's no issue with them for an indefinite period or for numerous applications. Maybe you could just enlighten me.
I think though, Jim, that's something that we should take up at the conclusion of the public portion of the meeting, and we can have a discussion in regards to that, in regards to other business that we wish to discuss.
Okay,
Might be the proper forum for that.
sure, I'm fine.
Okay. Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Karen, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A-2022-0007-H to construct a steel pile dock addition and request for the variance to the following sections of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Section 4.28.2, paragraph E, maximum combined surface area. Permitted is 177.9 square meters. That was granted in the minor variance application number A2014-004H. Existing is 173.8 square meters. Proposed is 190 square meters for a variance of 12.1 square meters. Section 4.28.2, paragraph D, maximum length of dock, 15 meters is permitted. Existing is 15 meters. Proposed is 16.7 meters for a variance of 1.7 meters. Subject to the following conditions: that the owners complete an amendment to their existing site plan agreement prior to the issuing of a building permit pursuant to Section 41 of the Planning Act. 2, that the owners apply for and obtain a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. And 3, the extent of the variances will be limited to that shown on the sketch plan submitted with the application. All those in favor? Carried, approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you. I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0008-H for Agarwal is to construct a new storage building on the subject lands and is requesting a variance for maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters. A letter of objection was received from Liz and John Ord.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? Mr. Forshaw?
Hello, good afternoon, Council. Yes, Alex Forshaw.
Sorry.
All good. Hasn't been the first time.
With my eyesight, I was lucky to get that.
We are representing our clients, Lalit and Wendy Agarwal. I'm presenting before Council this afternoon to request a minor variance of 0.6 lot coverage within the 60 meters of shoreline for the property 81A Sealy Bay Road. I reviewed the township's letter of recommendation, and I'm happy to see that Council is in favor of our ask. There's a couple of things that I just like to point out that I think make good planning sense with the storage building location. With the increased setback from the water of 50 meters, we'll still have natural tree cover in front of the building near the shoreline. We are also placing the majority of the storage building on an old cottage property site that has been cleared and left as bald rock for some time. This will be built upon covering the exposed bedrock face, and around the building, we will be revegetating and landscaping in order to create an aesthetically pleasing environment for our clients as well as viewers from Lake Joe. And I just also want to point out that we submitted a site plan agreement with the township and it was approved on January 1st. So that being said, we would like to ask the approval of this minor variance from the township, and I'm here to answer any questions from any members of council or any others. Thank you.
Do any members of the committee have any questions? Stuart?
Yeah, the layout seemed to be very poorly done on top of that hill. Like with all that blasting that has gone on, all I could find was old, looks like blasting caps or whatever, and couldn't see a real defined area of where this storage area is going to be.
Was it not pinned to the bedrock at that point in time?
Did not see anything clearly marked.
Okay. Well, I would have to ask the builder if they had a surveyor out to pin the location of the storage building, but they might have been holding off until this variance meeting had been reviewed. So, but if you go on the satellite imagery provided by the township, you can see there's an old cottage. It's still standing at that point in time, but the storage building is basically going in that area. So.
Mr. Forshoe, and maybe to Taylor as well, when the site plan was submitted, was there, as part of that site plan, was there an actual vegetation plan, or was it just a non-specific commitment to revegetate?
I think at that point, it was non-specific, but I think upon approval, obviously, we have a landscape architect on the job, so we can go further into detail and specify exactly what we're planning on vegetating in front and around the building.
And I'm just going to jump in here, Greg. We are going to require, as one of the conditions for approval, we are requiring the applicants to revegetate and submit a revised plan to recognize that.
Okay.
And we are fine with doing that.
Because the only in the conditions, it really is non-specific. It just says that the owners amend the existing site plan, recognized in their site plan agreement, to illustrate the proposed vegetation on the subject property. At that location where the pool and those buildings are taking place, it is sitting up on completely bald rock, whether that was blasted before or whether that is as a result of taking down an old cottage. But the views from the lake will see all of those structures up there. There's nothing to obstruct that view from the water. So I think that it either should be a requirement or an amendment to condition number 1, that a site plan agreement be approved prior to the issuing of a building permit. Terry, I see that you have something to say.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, in the past, when there's been concerns with revegetating a site that was, either impacted, was previously impacted, the condition that we typically applied with the committee was that one of the conditions would be that the applicants submit a revegetation plan by a recognized professional to be approved by the director of planning. And then that would cover you right up, cover off all the concerns that I've heard.
Okay,
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
sorry, Mr.
revegetation.
Forshue, sorry.
Typically, that revegetation plan becomes part and parcel of the site plan agreement.
For sure. Does that mean then, Terry, that we would have to amend the condition number 1 to request that?
Yes,
Or-
or add a condition at the end.
Okay. Mr. Forshue?
So we do have previously approved site plan agreements. So would this just be a condition that is added that we can provide by the professional, like the landscaper, say?
Yeah, this would be a condition to this specific request.
Okay. Yeah, no problem at all.
Jim?
Yeah, can I just ask a couple of questions, Mr. Chair? So was the site plan, did it go through this building committee or not? Hello?
No, it did not go through the Committee of Adjustment. It would have gone through planning. Is that right, Taylor? Yes.
Yes, that is correct. That'd be a delegated approval to staff for residential site plans.
Okay, is there ever a case where site plan does go to the Committee of Adjustment, or is it strictly on variances primarily, and you would never see the site plan in advance?
If occasionally a site plan approval could go to council, if it's a major site plan amendment or if it's highly contentious. Typically for residential site plans, though, they're done through the staff level just because there's so many, it would probably bog down council if they all went there.
So just help me out then, Mr. Chair, and I had difficulty, and I apologize, but I couldn't quite see on the ground what I'm seeing in the drawings. And with regards to the proposed building, that building obviously is not there. Is there any other building up on top of that hill that I missed?
There's a small tree fort, but that will be demolished.
Okay, so on the storage building layout, I see a proposed storage building, but on the one side of that, I see another storage building number 2, or there's another storage building. Is that part of this process? Is that coming back or is it part of the site plan, or what part is that?
We already have approval for the one storage building to the left, which is in question, and we also have the building permit for the garage as well. So we only have the storage building in question is the one to the right that is needing the variance.
Okay.
Okay. So should we, Terry, your recommendation, we add one more condition that a vegetation plan be submitted prior to a permit being issued?
Part of the would be one of the conditions of the approval, if it was granted, would be that the applicant would have to submit a revegetation plan prepared by a professional to be approved by the director of planning.
If you could note too that it be implemented via site plan control, and that would be to make it concrete and just make sure there's no loose ends.
So, I defer through Mr. Chair to the director of planning to word it appropriately.
Okay.
What question about the site plan control? Would that be another application?
Through you, Mr. Essentially, this is just expanding upon the condition 1 that's already there. It's just noting that the proposed vegetation would be illustrated and the groundwork done by a landscape architect or some type of other professional. So it would form the basis of essentially what condition 1 already is. So it's nothing beyond the scope of what's already there. It's just being a bit more specific so you know exactly who does what and how it will be implemented.
Okay, sounds good. Would my client have to provide a securities check as well?
We do typically require a small amount of securities just to ensure that the work is done through site plan control. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. I'm fine with this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forshue. Taylor, when you want, do you want to, when I read the application, do you want to add in the last amendment?
Yeah, is that typically how we would do it, Lauren? I might ask the secretary treasurer on what kind of the custom is in that regard.
Yeah, so we'll just make sure everyone votes on adding a new condition first, but it's up to you if you wanted to amend number 1 because they're going through site plan approval already. We can just make number 1 more specific.
Okay. All right, I'll make number 1 just more specific. How's that? Okay. Sorry, Terry?
I think you've got to move a motion to do that, Greg.
I'll have-
I'll second
yeah.
that. And then
I'll
we
need a
vote.
mover and a seconder to amend condition number 1 on the plan to include with the application an approved vegetation site plan. Moved by Terry, seconded by Stuart. All in favor? Carried. All right. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-008-H to construct a new storage building 56.6 square meters on the subject lands and requires variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Section 6.3, table 6.2, maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters. Maximum permitted is 7.25%. Proposed is 7.85%. The required variance is 0.6%. Subject to the following conditions: that the owners amend the existing site plan recognized in their site plan agreement to illustrate the proposed vegetations on the subject property, including a vegetation plan prepared and submitted by a professional. That the existing shed be relocated to comply with the minimum setback provisions for the limited service residential exception 110 bracket LSR-110 bracket zone, provided that an encroachment onto the neighboring lot line exists. 3, that the owners apply for and obtain a building permit for the new storage building within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. And 4, the extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. All those in favor? Unanimous, carried.
Thank you, Alex. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the decision, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you very much, council. Have a nice
Thank
afternoon.
you. Take
Bye.
care. I will now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0009-HO is to permit a lot coverage of 9.5% on the subject property to allow for a deck and recognize the existing carport. No formal correspondence was received. Thank you.
Does anyone in attendance wish to speak to this application? Okay. Do any of the committee members have any questions? Okay, but the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0009-H to permit a lot coverage of 9.5% on the subject property to permit the deck and recognize the existing carport. The following variance is required to zoning bylaw 2006-125 in order to permit the attached deck and carport on the subject property. Section 6.3, table 6.3, maximum lot coverage within 60 meters. Permitted is 7.5%, 7.9% from a previous approval. Existing is 7.9%. Proposed is 9.5% with a variance of 2%, 1.6 over the previous approval, subject to the following conditions: that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. The extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application, and that the development of the subject lands be subject to the site plan control as per section 41 of the Planning Act. All those in favor?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, did we get a mover and seconder on that one?
I thought we did. I apologize if I didn't. I'll need a mover first and a seconder. Moved by Karen, seconded by Terry. I will not reread the application since it's been recorded, and I will need all those in favor. Carried unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the same, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Okay, I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0010-H, Boris and Morgan Avenue Investments, is to permit the reconstruction of a recently demolished legal non-complying boathouse, which will be located further away from the westerly lot line and increase slightly in height. Letters of support were received from the abutting neighbors, Les Boris and Jacqueline and Brian Work.
Is there anyone in attendance who wish to speak to this application?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm here to answer questions if they're needed. I believe this is fairly straightforward, but I'll leave it to you guys to ask your questions.
Do any of the committee members have any questions? Stuart?
Yeah, it appeared where I was reading the site plan correctly, where they plan on putting this boathouse, the water depth doesn't look very deep there. Is it going to extend far enough out for vessels to get in and out?
To answer your question, the previous boathouse was more than adequate for the vessels that were in question.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Jim, seconded by Karen. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A-2022-0010-H to permit the reconstruction of a recently demolished legal non-complying boathouse and request variance to the following sections of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Table 4.4 and 4.17B, permitted as a one-story boathouse with one interior and one boat port slip. Proposed, the new boathouse will be constructed and not comply with the parent zoning provisions. Variance of 1.5-story boathouse, 1.5-story two-slip boathouse. Section 4.28, paragraph C, table 4.3, side yard setback. 9-meter minimum setback. Proposed is 5.6 meters to the dock and 10.9 meters to the boathouse. Currently 5.6 meters setback to dock and 7.1 meters to the boathouse. Requiring a variance of 3.4 meters to dock and 10.9 meters to the boathouse. Table 4.4 and section 4.28.1 paragraph G, boathouse height. Permitted is as existing for a 1.5-story. Proposed is 0.82 meters above the existing height. That results in a variance of 6.42 meters for the boathouse. 5.6 currently exists. Subject to the following conditions: that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. The extent of the variance will be limited to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. That the lands be subject to site plan control as per section 41 of the Planning Act for vegetation retention and restoration. All those in favor? Unanimous, carried.
Thank you. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the same, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Okay, I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0011-H for Reitman is to construct a screened porch addition on the subject lands and is requesting a variance for maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters. No formal correspondence was received.
Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak to this application?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Savas Baradas of Plan Muskoka, PO Box 5384, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H2K7. I'm here representing the applicants as their agent and professional planner. I don't have a lot to add to this one. I feel it's fairly straightforward. It's for the construction of a screen porch on the side of a building that has a building permit for it already. The property is fairly well vegetated, particularly along the frontage on the shoreline side of things. So the additional 0.9% coverage that's being proposed by this proposal, I feel like it is fairly minor. It's going to be well buffered from view from the lake, and the property can accommodate this additional coverage without appearing overbuilt. I read the staff report that was prepared by staff and the recommendations for the approval of the application, and that it meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. I'd have to agree with them on that. If the members of the committee have any questions though about this, I could be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Do any of the committee members have any questions? Okay, I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A-2022-011-H to construct a screen porch addition on the subject lands and request variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. The section 6.3, table 6.2, maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters. Maximum permitted is 7.5%. Proposed is 8.4%, requiring a variance of 0.9%. Subject to the following conditions. The extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. That the owner applies for and obtains a building permit for the new screen porch within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried unanimous.
Thanks, Savas. So the application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days, and the 20-day appeal period starts now.
Thank you.
We'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application number A-2022-0013-H Ellery is to permit the reconstruction of the existing legal non-complying dwelling on the subject property and is requesting a variance for an increase in maximum floor area and maximum shoreline width. Correspondence was received in support of the application from Robert Edwards, Pierre and Jeanette Villeneuve, John Fabello, Monica and Scott Willamasi, Megan and Eric Shiklona, and Sandra Davy.
Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak to this application? Yes, sir.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Stefan Sherback, and I'm a planner with Planscape, 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge. I'm here today representing the Ellery family with respect to this application, and Terry Ellery is also available to the committee if there's any questions I can answer. I've read the staff report in front of you and fully agree with the planning analysis in relation to this proposal. And in addition, I just want to thank the planners at MHBC for their time. I know we've had many discussions. There's been lots of interpretations and several changes to this proposal so that the committee members have a clear proposal in front of them that, in my opinion, follows the overall direction of your official plan and zoning bylaw provisions. I don't want to repeat anything mentioned in the report, but I'd just like to focus on 4 key considerations before you make your assessment and decision. Number one, the property is a point lot. So clearly the lot itself has 3 sides along the water. And this is an important variable, as the requested additional structure width along the shoreline would in fact be smaller if this was a standard lot size along the water, just taking that into consideration. The second point is that the applicant has carefully chosen to utilize the same footprint of the existing and new structure. This location will ensure that the new structure is not going to be seen from the road. It's not going to be seen from the neighboring properties, and nor will it be actually visible from the water. The lot is very unique. When you take a look at the photographs in the staff report and the air photo, you can clearly see that there's a significant amount of coniferous vegetation, especially right along the front of the water. And again, considering how close the structure is to the water. The photos again are very clear, and they show the extent of this existing vegetation buffer. And the proposed location will ensure that there be very minimal, if any, or very minimal vegetation removal. If it were to be moved elsewhere, there will be a significant amount of vegetation that's going to be removed. The property slopes away from the water higher, so it will in fact raise the building, so it will be visible from the neighbor's perspective, the road and the water. And of course, it will impact the proposed septic bed location, which again will involve additional clearing on this point property. The proposal in front of you seeks a modest improvement from the setback to the water. And when you in fact take a look at the footprints of the existing and the proposed, the additional floor area is actually extended away from the water towards the center of the property. The last and final point is that all other bylaw provisions will be met. As you can see with the letters in front of you, the owners have reached out to many of the immediate neighbors. You have many letters of support. And again, I fully support the review, staff's review of the 4 tests, and fully support the conditions in front of you. I would respectfully request committee to support this application, and happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the committee members have any questions? Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Terry. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A 2022-0013-H to permit the reconstruction of the existing legal non-complying dwelling on the subject property, and request variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 2006-125. Section 4.17, paragraph C, table 4.1, maximum floor area increase. Permitted increase is 32.5 square meters, 350 square feet. The existing dwelling is 179.5 square meters, 1,932 square feet. The proposed dwelling is 276.7 square meters, or 2,978 square feet. An increase with a variance increasing of 97.2 square meters, or 1,046 square feet, resulting in a variance request of 64.7 square meters. Section 4.17, paragraph C, table 4.1, maximum shoreline width increase. Permitted increase is 20%. The existing dwelling currently has 20.9 meters. Proposed dwelling is 26.1 meters. Increase variance with resulting in an increase of 24.8%, resulting in a variance request of 4.8%. Subject to the following conditions: that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. 2, the extent of the variance will generally conform to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application. 3, that the development of the subject lands be subject to site plan control as per section 41 of the Planning Act. And 4, that the owner provide the township with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority septic approval or sign off prior to obtaining a building permit. Are there any further questions or comments prior on the resolution? All those in favor? Unanimous, carried.
Thank you. The application has been approved. You will get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the decision, and the 20-day appeal period now starts.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. I'll now ask the Secretary Treasurer to introduce the final application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of minor variance application A-2022-0014-H roads is to permit an addition to an existing cottage, requesting a variance for maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters of the shoreline. No formal correspondence was received.
Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak to this application? Mr. Deloitte. Can you unmute your computer, please?
Thank you, Chair and members of committee. I'm here tonight representing Holden Rhodes, the family, the Rhodes family. They're planning to build a family addition onto their cottage. I'm also joined by Corbin Patton, and Corbin is here if you have any questions or you want to see any graphics. We're happy to provide that. The property, as noted, is on Old Post Road. It's a large property, a little over 19 hectares in size. We're asking for two variances. First is a setback variance from 20 meters to 17.9 for a very small portion of the addition. For the most part, the addition will be invisible and is on a flat area behind the cottage, and therefore is not visible from the lake. So that's the first variance. The second is a coverage variance. Given the size of the property, the maximum is 5.85. We're requesting 7.75%. And so I've looked at the application. I'm a professional planner. I find that the proposal is minor, certainly is appropriate for the development of the property. It's consolidated into the building. In terms of the intent of the bylaw and the design, it meets all the tests, I think, and certainly consistent with the the waterfront guidelines and the official plan. So having said that, we've read the staff report and we're agreed with the conditions. And if the committee deems this acceptable, we will intend to proceed with a site plan approval application. And then Mr. Rhodes has already planted 200 trees on this property since he took ownership in 2012. And he is quite prepared to plant some more trees if that's the committee's wish, but we're probably going to do that anyhow. We'll prepare a landscape plan to accompany the site plan. And having said that, I think the only last thing I'll mention is that Mr. Rhodes plans to start the main construction after the prime summer season. So in terms of timing and that, and that I think is, in the off season. So having said that, we're happy to answer any questions and recommend approval of the application. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to it? Mr. Patton?
I don't necessarily need to speak, but I'm here to answer any questions if need be.
Okay. Thank you. Do any of the committee members have any questions? Then I'll require a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve this application. Moved by Terry, seconded by Jim. That the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves variance application A-2022-0014-H to permit an addition to an existing cottage, resulting in a 1.9% increase to the maximum lot coverage, 2.75% from the base bylaw standards, within 60 meters of the shoreline. The following variances are requested to the SRI-89 Zone to Zoning Bylaw 2006-125. Section 6.3, Table 6.2, front yard setback. Required is 20 meters, proposed is 17.95 meters to the proposed deck. and 18.82 to proposed cottage. Currently 14.9 meters to existing deck, 18.7 meters to cottage exists. The variance recognized the existing and permit 1.18 meters to the cottage addition and 2.05 meters to proposed deck. Also, section 6.3, table 6.3, maximum lot coverage, bylaw requires 5.85% via special exception. Proposed is 7.75%, requiring a variance of 1.9%, which is 2.75% from table 6.3. Subject to the following conditions: that the owner applies for and obtains a building permit within 2 years of the date of decision of the Committee of Adjustment. The extent of the variance will be limited to that shown on the sketch plan submitted in the application, and that the lands be subject to site plan control for vegetation retention and restoration. Are there any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Unanimous, carried.
Thank you. The application has been approved. You'll get a letter in the next few days notifying you of the decision, and the 20-day appeal period now starts. Thank you.
Thank you, staff and committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any, ask the Committee of Adjustment, is there any other business? I see we have a number of people still online. Jim, you had your questions earlier?
Well, my questions have to do with a variance that has been accepted and proposed years earlier, and then the applicant comes back. I guess there's, in that particular application with Dunn, we're talking, a 10% variance, I suppose. My question would be in 2004, understanding that over a period of 8 years, things change. His explanation with regards to difficulties with M&R is spot on. And so he wants to move forward now with a larger dock structure. I get that, but it's not in the application. And I guess I'm wondering whether, and it's partly the same thing with Argyle, where there's information that I didn't have when I'm looking at the particular building application or variance. It would have helped me a lot, I think. And I guess if the building committee is accustomed to not having that information, or perhaps had it, and because I'm a late comer to the party, didn't have it, you may feel totally comfortable with the information. I look at, so it begs the question, and I'm pretty reasonable, but it begs the question as to how many times can a person come back for a variance request? Does the building department take that into consideration, or the planning department take that into consideration? And we don't get that, or it doesn't appear on the application form. There's just no information. If I looked at the Argyle application, that site plan, the committee maybe was familiar with that site plan. I was not. Does that make a difference? Yeah, it may make a difference to me when I'm looking at that site plan and trying to figure out where this new building structure is proposed to go vis-a-vis the other structure that's part of the site plan that's not there, and it's not marked out. And so those are my comments. I guess they're more comments maybe than questions. I haven't been on the committee for more than a couple of months, and it's just a case of more information, so perhaps I can make an informed decision.
Terry?
Yeah, I mean, to Jim's point, and to Stuart, I think was, brought it up in the meeting. And in my opinion, if it's not marked out, right? I mean, who's got a crystal ball? So if it's not marked out, the application should be deferred until such time as it is. You
Well, I
know,
think, oh, sorry, Karen.
I would like to agree with Terry, because that is exactly precisely what I was going to suggest. All the years that I was involved, we absolutely always had it set out. It was marked. You could tell exactly where the item was. And another a piece of information is if there was a house, a cottage, a shed that you were reading about in the information before you went to this item, and you had to look around, and all of a sudden the items are not there, they have been removed. We used to get at least an email or whatever to let us know that there was a change. So you were not completely surprised when you showed up and you had to review the entire area. It would make more sense when you definitely had all the information, and definitely the item with the application, it had to be set out and marked up so you could see exactly where it was. That's the way it used to be. And it makes a big difference for me when it's not done that way.
you know, to the point, I think that, most of the ones that I've looked at since I've been on the committee have been well marked out. There's the odd one where it's a little confusing. But in this particular case, in this application here, I mean, it's being managed by professionals. They should have been out there and had it marked, and, to my point, if it's not marked out, then it's one trip by the committee wasted. And then there's, after they mark it out, it's another trip out there, which is an expense to the township, and an inconvenience to the committee members. It should, if you don't mark it out, then reapply.
I agree.
To me, that's fair. If you're not going to manage your request, and we waste our time to go out there and can't figure out what it is that you want, right? Then reapply, pay the fee again. We'll go out and look at it again. I mean, that'll get the message across. But and to Jim's point about how many times they can come back, Taylor, correct me unless I'm wrong, but I mean, people have the right to apply for a minor variance as much as they want. And I think if you try to stipulate in a site plan agreement as a condition of an approval that, this is it, you can never come back again. I mean, it'll just, I don't think they don't typically hold any water, do they?
But sorry, can I just add something to that, Taylor? Because I guess you're getting piled on a bunch of questions here, but in regards to Jim's point and what you're saying, Taylor or Terry, is that I agree with Jim in that you look at that one site where they're putting that structure up on top of that hill. They've completely, that's not just bald rock, they've blown that away. And they applied some time ago for a minor variance to put one large storage building up there. That was approved. That may very well be reasonable for a committee of adjustment. But then what you're looking to do is once you get that approved, then potentially you come back for another minor variance. And I understand, Terry, that you can't limit people coming back for a minor variance. But when you look at it all in totality, it may very well be not a minor variance. It may be something that should be going to council. It may very well be a rezoning. If you're looking at 7.5% and you're adding on and you're going to 9, and we say, just for argument's sake, 1.5% is reasonable and it's minor. But then they get that approved and they wait because some of these sites take years for them to develop. They may very well change their mind. But if you look at when they add the second 1% on, that in itself is minor. But when you look at the application in totality, it's not minor. It should very well be, may very well be subject to, should be going to council for a rezoning, not just 2 minor variances.
And Greg, that's what Mr. Ward was talking about as well, that there'd already been a variance here. And before they even put the building up, they're asking for another variance. which, as you point out, it may be impactful.
Yeah, Terry?
I don't agree. I don't disagree with either one of you, but I think the fact that remains, and maybe from lessons learned here, is that if the owner wishes to proceed with a minor variance, that's his right. Whether in fact we feel it's big enough to warrant a rezone, that's all governed by, I believe, by the Planning Act. I mean, in this particular case, I was concerned more about the building being visible from the lake and making sure that we got a correct revegetation plan, and that, Taylor had to, when it was to his purview to review it and approve it, to his approval, right? Because as far as, he's well within his rights to ask for what he asked for, even though he's asked for it before. I mean, is it?
But Terry, Terry, that application, the only reason that I knew that he had a variance before was because of the letter from Mr. Ward. There was nothing on the application that I noted that there was a previous variance.
Sorry to interrupt everyone. Just a reminder to keep it general terms instead of discussing the applications that were approved. But if you just keep it in general terms, we can continue the discussion.
Taylor, sorry. Go ahead.
I think I'm hearing a couple of things. Karen brought up, and this was something that staff can start doing again. I wasn't aware that it used to be. If we notice a change from when we pre-consult and what we circulate versus what's on site, we'll do better at communicating with the committee. I can think of the exact example she's thinking of, and I think staff were equally surprised when we went on site and something was different than when we were speaking to the proponent a month before. So we'll do better at that. I'm thinking in order to help explain previous variances, and Terry's quite correct, we can't stop people from applying an addition. They do have that right. But maybe we could insert a section in our reports on previous planning applications or previous variances or previous zoning bylaw amendments, so you can get a cumulative look of what has happened over the years that's relevant to the application at hand. I don't think it will want to include shore road allowance closures because that doesn't really affect the variance, but we can help kind of paint the picture of what happened yesterday to what's in front of committee today. And I believe that was the two large, and we can advise applicants that not marking out is kind of to their own detriment, and that really emphasize that they should be doing that before committee goes on site, because it makes it difficult to analyze it. So we can re-emphasize that to people applying, put it right on the application as well.
Is that not a requirement at this point, Taylor?
I don't believe it is a requirement under the Planning Act, but I think it is a local practice that we do try to promote and push. I would have to double check, and I can get back to committee by email or the next meeting. I don't know if you could dismiss an application on it not being marked out, but it might be that you have a hard time determining the impact on the ground. So if it's getting tabled, that doesn't help the applicant. So I can respond to that likely tomorrow.
Okay, Terry?
Yeah, through you. So Taylor, just another little lesson in planning 101 for me, please. But the mere fact of having a previous variance on a piece of property or a rezone or a previous variance, it isn't grounds to deny a new one.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. So it's just for information purposes. Right, okay, thank you.
I think it would be, Taylor, I think it would be important that if there was a prior application, if there were either letters of support or or protest against the application, that they should be, if you're going to include priors, I don't know if those are readily available or if they're not. But if you've had if there's been a contentious application, 3 or 4 years ago, some of the people that have been on the committee for a long time may or may not remember that, but people, such as myself or Jim that are newer to the committee wouldn't have any prior history of that. And I had the same questions as Jim when I first came in, that you would see that prior applications had taken place and you had no knowledge of what was really had happened prior to the one that you were being presented with.
Okay, and also just, I think committee knows, but you can call any of us at any time, especially the author of the report on these applications, and we can go over some of the background with you as staff members. So that option's obviously available too, to help out with any other questions.
Terry?
So another question for Taylor, Brady, and the ladies. So you've heard some discussion from the committee that certain applications are uncomfortable to the committee because they feel they're major enough to warrant a rezone and shouldn't be in front of the committee. My question to you guys simply is, how much influence do you think you have on the applicant in the pre-consultation process? Because isn't that where they come and sort of, and Jamie, you I see you're on too, you could chime in too if you want, but that's when the applicant comes in and says, this is what we want to do and what do we need to do this. And obviously if it's an uneducated applicant, they take a lot of guidance from you, but obviously if it's a professional planning consultant, that he may not, but at what particular, how much influence do you guys think that you have on advising them the proper route to proceed?
I would say generally it's the advice that we give on which route to go in a pre-consultation is usually well respected by applicants. If you're saying that you have concerns on whether the committee would view this minor, but it's ultimately their decision what to apply for, they tend to take it quite seriously. And we've seen applications that get amended through the course from pre-consultation to what ultimately comes before to committee as a result of it as well. So
okay,
I would say pretty high level of input is taken there, Terry.
Okay.
Any other business?
I would just say thank you. It's helped out just this discussion, I think, and hearing some of the concerns. And I thank the staff for their responses, Mr. Chair.
And Jim, I can tell you from a personal point, when I first came in and I looked at an application, you almost, when you go there, you look at it in totality. And what I have learned through the other members and through Jamie is that, we are really only allowed to look at the application that's presented to us. All of the other things that may or may not have been done on the property are not within our venue. We look solely at the point of the application, not that the fact that somebody may have, blasted the top of Mount Olympus off on Lake Ross, so without ever speaking to anybody, that really doesn't fall within our parameters of what we're supposed to be looking at.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll require a mover and a seconder for a resolution to adjourn the April 13th, 2022 Committee of Adjustment hearing. Moved by Stuart, seconded by Karen, that the Committee of Adjustment for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this hearing at 5:06 p.m. on Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. The committee will hold its next hearing at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, May 11th, 2022, or at the call of the chair, unless the Secretary Treasurer has not received complete applications for committee consideration. All in favor of adjourning? Unanimous. And for the committee, I will be here for the May meeting. I will not be here for the June meeting. I'll be away on holiday. So Stuart, you're the head honcho in June.
I think I can handle it.
Thank you.
We got
Thank you,
faith in
everybody.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.